Okay, welcome back. Then let's do it next. The last part of the scene. One is that we want to give the camera. Add an animation. So that gives us the whole picture. Have a bit of movement. Now our entire scene. There is animation. But our cameras. But it is sitting here quietly. It does look like a 2.5D or a 2-digit one. An animated feel. So we're here. You can try giving the camera to create some effects. Then we select the camera object in the outline window. After choosing, we can do this on the first frame in our timeline. Go to K Previous Camera Position Animation. I'm here. I hope the camera can float slightly up and down. Hopefully, it will have a feel similar to a handheld camera. What about after K Good Position keyframe? We can enter its curve panel. We find its Z-axis position. We give it directly. Just add the previous cover text. If you use the mask modifier, we only need one key piece. Then let's play it and see. Now I really feel like I'm resigning with my hands. Kind of like being in a car, right? We can convert this scaling value to set it slightly larger. For example, let's say we are given a 75. Make it slightly slower. Or 55. A little slower, right? Let it have a gentler feeling of floating up and down. Let's take a look again. Now there will be a small problem. It's just that the ending and starting positions will be slightly shaky because their data are not the same. So as for the camera, we can go by limiting its scope of influence. Limit its scope of influence. The starting frame is the first frame. So our end frame is 250 frames. Let's make it ease in at 5 frames. Ease out is also 5 frames. Let's take a look. So actually wed better. Let the overall intensity be slightly lower. Right? Make the whole intensity a little bit lower. What about other words? We have to pay attention. The curve effect of its tail. We can do this by, what about the noise modifier? To use its offset. Or the 2 options of phase. We can give it some variation. In other words, we hope to be near it. Can produce a relatively calm feeling. Right? We can also use phase. As for the phase, it should be in the same position before and after it. Change. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at the effect. It looks okay. We set its entry and exit points to 10 frames. This way it will be smoother. Then such a method. We have mentioned it before, right? We use it on some slightly moving objects. Okay, right? Although it is not completely repeated. But it seems that there is no skipping feeling at the beginning and end. Okay, now we have made the first small animation of the camera. In addition, we hope that the scene can have a swirling feeling. That is, we hope that the picture can go around in a circle. In other words, look at the back and go around in a circle. Then there are 2 ideas here. The first one is that you bind the entire scene. Then go spin it. Of course, I don't think this is a good method, because your whole scene looks very complicated now. So I suggest that it would be better to let the camera revolve around the object. Then we choose the latter. Shift-S. Here we can use an option in the lower left corner. Align our cursor to the world's dot at the very center, because our entire scene is also in the center. Then we shift and add a. Let's create a new circle in the curve. S slightly enlarge. What a circle! Next we bind the camera to this ring. As a submachine of this ring, we use Ctrl-P to bind. In this case, in fact, we just need to rotate the ring. The camera can then revolve around it. We can go to the camera view and take a look. We choose the ring. Then let's rotate it. Right? In fact, it's like our scene is changing. Good. Then we choose the ring. Press the K key at its first frame position. Let's record the rotation. Then we can come to 250 frames. Rotate it. RZ 360. Then we go to K to rotate it. We can take a look at the current effect. Now our entire scene has one go. Rotating animation. But the whole scene is spinning now. I actually want it to rotate only within a certain range. Say I want it to be only between 96 and 144 frames. When? Let it turn. Rotate this way. I think it will be more interesting. Let's take another look. I feel better now. Then we can also adjust it. The effect of our rotation. For example, we can rotate it. Inside, turn off both Y and X. In this case, we will leave only one Z, because I want to pull the value of its rotation. In other words, let it be slower first, then faster. Right? First slowly and then quickly. And I wanted it to have a reverberating feel. Right? There is a little echoing feeling. Just turn it over and bounce it back a little. Let's take a look again. Right? There is a small reverberating feeling. Let's take a look again. It feels pretty good now. It will turn around after a while. Turn it around after a while. The effect will be better. In fact, I think this echoes. A little not smooth. Right? Because it's a very hard right angle. So actually we can go behind it. Go to K for another key stitch. Also come to K for a spin. This way it has a small arc. Able to extend past. We can take a look at the effect. It feels like it would be a little too much. Let's move it over here a little bit. Then put the handle. Let's go back a little bit. Let's take a look again. Okay, I feel pretty good now. Let's move a little further. It feels good now. The whole scene is full of dynamic feeling. It doesn't always stay there. Okay, we want such a result for the time being. Save the file. So after having such a result, what we have to do next is to make a simple optimization on the screen again. We can turn off the display of the lower layer of the view. The result you see now is more similar to our final rendering result. Now there is another problem behind our scene. It is a gray. That doesn't seem to fit in with the whole scene. So I need to put the scene behind. Make some color changes. We can change the current view. Split it to the left. Then change the left view to the right view. Let's change to the left side editor again. Of course, you can also combine the two views below. Change one of them to your left side. It's also possible. What should I do after I change? Note that by default it's all in your shader. Create a material for one of our objects. The moon or your grass, etc. So what we have to do now is the color of its background. Here we can change this object to the world environment. The world environment here refers to the color on our back. If I go and change its color, you will find that there will be some color changes behind us. For example, make a white. Actually, it looks pretty good. Black is actually not bad either. Or you put it in red. Or blue-green. Right? It all feels good. So we will use this method next. Let's modify the background behind it. Then when modifying the background behind it, just now when I went to adjust it, everyone will find a problem. We have some materials. When I brighten this background, or when it's dark, you will find that its brightness will change to a certain extent. In other words, the brightness of our background. It will also affect our pictures. The effect of certain materials. What about these materials? What are you mainly using? They all use such a node. That is our slow color. Convert to RGB. Then add our color gradient. As long as these three nodes are used. What about these three nodes? In fact, it can feel the changes in light. It's because your lights have become brighter. Or it's getting weaker. Or your background has become brighter. Became weaker. Will affect materials synthesized using these three nodes. So in other words, our current scene effect, they are all based on the background color being the current grayscale value and simulated. So if you make the background very bright or it's very dark, then it will affect our previous materials. This is a premise. So what should you do if you encounter this situation? We also have a way. We can change this background color. Safe, let's copy one. Copy two. Then mix the two background colors. We follow the Control key and Safe key on the interface. Pull the right mouse button to blend down. Good. Well, now we've created a hybrid colorizer for both of them. Next, we Shift+A. Let's create a light path node among the input nodes. In this node, we will see that it has a lot of some. The type of node output, we're here. You can think of this as a camera array, connected to its coefficient. Just connect it like me. Connect over. Then we can choose a background color to adjust it. Not it now. Then let's change it to another one. This one below. Let's adjust it. So what changes has it made? Everyone, pay attention. After I pass through it like this, the background color I am adjusting now. No matter how I adjust it. Have you noticed? The brightness of objects in my scene will not change. Its brightness changes. Now controlled by this background color. Did you see it? I just keep this background color, not moving. The background color below. I can adjust the color any way I want, right? Any color palette. How to mix colors. It will not produce other color changes, right? Then this is equivalent to, I will put the background behind, right? Already separated. Divided into two parts. That is to say, one is the impact on the picture. One is the influence of our color. Then the feeling now is very good, right? Very great. You can choose a color effect you like. Just close it. So what principles do they use? How to get such effect? Let's take a look at this. What is a camera array? Then I will simply draw a schematic diagram. Let me give you an example. For example, at the bottom of our screen, there is a camera. Then the camera looks forward. Then in front of us. For example, let's say there is a loving heart. What's behind is our background. Then the camera array. It means the light emitted forward from the camera. Right? The light emitted from the camera. Let's make a very simple analogy. For example, there is a ray of light A. It shines upon our love. There is a ray B. It's emitted into our background, right? So now what camera A's light sees is foreground object. You can think of it as all the objects you can see in our foreground. That light B is the light we see from the background. Then doesn't it actually have two parts? One is to see the background. One is to see objects. Then through the distinction between the two rays AB, you can tell who is the real background. That is the real background that affects the brightness of our picture. Scenery. Who is a background that only shows color. In other words, this algorithm is used. Made a cutout. Alpha keying. After cutting out the image, change the background to this. The actual light is still this. It is equivalent to separating the background and foreground. Then replace it with a color. This is how it works. Hope everyone can understand it. So if this is the case, we're right behind it. Just set a color. A color is set. Then we are here. Let's set it up casually. I don't want it to have a color slant. Let's set the previous one to a slightly lighter gray. We can slowly change it later. I also want to add a little glow, so we'll make it a little bit darker. For example, it's a little bluer or a little greener. I hope the moon can shine a little bit outward. Sleep. Make it look more like a night effect. So we set it up here. After its background effect, we can go back to our synthesizer. Synthesizer is the first time. Let's get into the synthesizer. The synthesizer is empty now. Nothing. The synthesizer is our post-production part. It's a bit similar to what we do in PS. To do some effects on images. After entering the synthesizer, let's click on the new button. So here it is. Some nodes we use. It will have some effect. It works on our screen. Then if we want to use the view, able to see the effects inside the synthesizer, we need to be behind. A little further to the right of this rendering mode, you can see that there is a drop-down button. Inside the drop-down button, synthesizer effects are disabled by default. That is to say, inside you. No matter how you adjust it, it is no longer visible on the screen. You want to see? You can choose camera or type. The camera means only in the entrance of the camera room. See the finished effect of our synthesizer. The first type is camera and perspective view. Everybody can see. I recommend seeds to everyone. Just use the type directly. I now use the general formula. After using the general formula, we can just find a symbiotic. Let's try the effect. For example, we can find the color correction. Here we find the hue saturation. Let's plug it in. Here I directly pull its saturation to 0. Pulling to 0 means there is no saturation. It becomes a black and white effect. So you know the effect of what I'm doing here. It will be mapped to our entire screen. So let's look back. There will be some bands on synergists here. The first is to disable. It's the effect of your synergist. It will not produce an effect in our screen. The second one is the camera. The camera means only when you press the camera. Go inside the camera. Only then can you use the effects in this synthesizer. And in perspective, it will not be applied. Always words. That's the camera and the perspective. We'll use an effect in our synthesizer. Of course, we don't want it to become a black and white. I hope the moonlight can be a little brighter inside. So I'm here. Add a gray light filter. It's called glare here. Let's pick up first. Then we change this glare type. Change from stripes to glow. Now in our screen. It should have a glow effect. But we still can't see it. Feeling of glow. The reason is the appearance of glow. There needs to be a prerequisite. It's your material. It should be brighter. That is to say, its brightness value requires more than 1. Then we can put the following. Curve editor, change to material. Then let's choose our moon. Let's take a look at the moon. Here we have 2 materials. Right? What about the moon material above? It should be brighter. It's this light yellow one. Now its shallowness is 1. Then let's try changing it to 3. When we change it to 3, you can see the effect of the moon is that it shines. Right? Then let's go a little lower. For example, change it to 2. I think it would be okay to change it to 2. Right? It has a bit of a glow to it. The effect is also good. So we need it here. Glowing slightly. What about other than that? Gray light above the node. And a glowing color. So if you wish, it can be more coordinated with the whole picture. We can make it glow. Prefer yellow or green. I think they are all good. Both yellow and green colors are okay. Red doesn't seem suitable, right? Then change it to a yellow-green feeling. Yellow-green feeling. The effect is not bad. So what if this is the case? We made the entire screen. It's almost done. Of course, among our synthesizers. You can also do a lot of more interesting content. It may not be used in our case. But I still want to introduce a few more nodes to you. For example, what are the other nodes that I use more frequently? For example, we will also use filters here. Let me take a look at the filter. There are still filters in this. The filter in the filter connects it. We will find out later. It seems like the picture is a little blurry. Of course, I don't mean to make it blurry. I hope it can be a little sharper. This way it will look more like a painting. Effect. So we can put the type under this filter. Change to this diamond shape sharpening. Diamond sharpening is a relatively strong type of sharpening. What kind of nucleation is there down there? Or Laplace? This is the effect of a stroke. I think the stroke effect is quite interesting too. Then I use diamond sharpening here. but don't use a particularly strong value. For example, we can use a 0.3. Give it a little bit of sharpening. You can select this node. Shortcut key M key on the key surface. You can preview the effect with and without sharpening. We will find. Now after adding sharpening, the effect seems really different. It's really clear. Let's press the space button and let it play. Now our whole picture has this feeling. Very good. Very good. So if you get here, our entire animation part is completed. Then next, let me tell you something about how to render it into an animation we want. Then when you bring the whole frame to the animated camera, and after setting up the synthesizer, then we can come to the renderer properties. Let's take a look. Then in the rendering properties, there is almost no need to set anything, because our EV renderer. If you are doing 3 renderings and 2 renderings, everyone just pay attention. That means you need to change its color management mode to standard. This way the colors will be more vivid when you see them. It also looks more like a painting. This is the result we want. So it's not a realistic effect. Right? What we are pursuing is another direction. So just pay attention to the location here. Because we didn't do any reflections in the picture, this is a feeling of ejaculation. So we don't need to do the rest. For example, you don't need to turn on any light. No need to turn on depth of field. No need to turn on motion blur. Because motion blur is turned on while it's spinning. It can really create blur, right? We don't need it either. So just turn it off. The default is to turn it off, so you don't need to open. Then we go to the rendering output. Then the first 2 values in the rendering output. It is the resolution of the rendering output of our animation. What about the monitor I have here? It's a 2K monitor. So I render the animation. Basically, it will be rendered to a resolution of 2K. Everyone can also follow their own needs. It can be rendered into 4K or 2K at 1080p. So my resolution. What I usually use is 2560 x 1440. Just make it a little bigger. Please pay attention here. The larger the resolution you set, then it will take more time for you to render. So be careful. If your computer performance is not particularly good, you set it to 4K. It's possible that it won't render successfully. Everyone should pay attention to this. In this case, we have already set the rendering resolution. Below is the true frequency. The true frequency refers to what we start from. How many truths do we get every second? Of course, everyone who plays games knows that. The higher the true frequency, the animation it plays will look smoother. Of course, we are not here to pursue. It's as smooth as the game. So the standard 24 frames, or 25 frames, 30 frames, they are all the ones we often choose. Frequency increasing mode. Actually imminent. Output 24 frames. It's all images. Are some sequence diagrams. We still need to use it in the later software. Combine it into an animation. So your increase frequency. It can be completely done in the post-processing software. Adjust again. I'm just telling you here. Our default increase rate here is 24 frames per second. We can just default. The rendering interval is now from the first frame rendered to frame 250. That is the default duration of the animation we make. I don't think it needs to be modified, because all the animation loops we have here, all based on 250 frames. So there is no need to change. There is a very important place further down. That's where the animation we render is placed. This needs to be set up. We click on it. Then we find a location where the animation needs to be saved. For example, if I put it in a position like this, they'll create a new folder for it. Call it rendering. Double-click to enter. Then down below we go. Give the sequence frames we render a name. We can call it Pikachu. Good. Then I added a small bar, because it will have a lot of storage examples later. bar 0010020030004, all the way to 250. Good. We click Accept. In this case, the files we saved have already been placed. Further down, we see that there are types of media. Type of media, it has video. There are also multiple layers of EXR. We don't even design this. And there are images. An image means that it is a sequence, one by one. There are 250 pictures in total, so you need to use later software. Combine it into an animation. Then if you don't know how to use late-stage software, you can also directly select it as a video. If you select video, it needs to involve the edge decoder. Let's turn on the edge decoder. Here we can take a look. A container for its codecs. We choose the commonly used MP4. Then just use S.264 as the codec. In this case, we can directly render it into a video. There will be a video output quality below. If you want it to be of a relatively good quality, you can choose lossless, or it can be perceptually lossless. More inclined to lossless, the size of the video file will be larger. Let's say it has 300 trillion and 500 trillion, right? Or 200 megabytes. Will be bigger. Then the closer to the bottom, the lower the quality. Because it compresses, it may only be a few tens of megabytes. So depending on the result you want, just go and make a selection. So what I need to tell you here is, since you are choosing now, render video directly. Render from the first frame to after the end of frame 250. This video can be successfully generated. There will be some situations here. For example, how many frames should I render to 100? My computer suddenly crashed. Or your Blender suddenly becomes unresponsive. Or maybe there was suddenly no power. Right? Some students use notebooks. When there is no external power supply, it ran out of power halfway through rendering. Then pay attention at this time. All the needles in front of you are almost white, because it is not rendered to the 250th pin. This video file is a video file that has been identified as corrupted. Everyone must remember this. Our animation actually renders very quickly, so it can probably be rendered within a few minutes. Then if you make some more complex animations, you might render one stitch at a time, just 30 seconds or a few minutes. 250 stitches may take several hours to render. So if you choose at this time, let it rise to a single video file. It is very easy for something to happen in the middle. Unpredictable circumstances. As a result, the previous few hours were all in vain. Everyone should pay attention to this place. So if you want to render some, for large documents, it is recommended that you still choose serial needles. That's sequence needle because it is a picture. So how many stitches do you render to? For example, 144 stitches. Suddenly stopped responding. It crashed or there was a power outage. Then my previous 143 frames have been rendered, right? Then I start Blender again. Open this scene file. Just render from 144 frames to 250 frames. That is to say, you can start from here. We enter 144. In this case, when rendering, it will render from here onwards. What appeared was also a picture, right? In other words, you can put your project, rendering broken into segments. Of course, if you have classmates who can help you render, your project is relatively big. Rendering is slower. You can also have this file sent to you at the same time. Many students each render 10 frames. Send to 25 classmates. Render 1 to 10 frames yourself. The second student renders from 11 frames to 20 frames. The third student went from 21 to 30 frames. Render it piece by piece like this. Finally, copy them into one piece. Form a complete animation sequence. This is also possible. This is about our use of video and sequence frame images. Some issues involved. They'll just use our image here. Image format. The default is shared machine. Then I will just choose the type of spelling machine. We don't need to set up the rest. In this case, we have already set up the entire layer scene. So let's play the animation again. The current animation looks like this. Before you officially start choosing animations, be sure to remember to save your file. Because after you set it up, rendered without saving, then if something goes wrong along the way, those settings you made before rendering, you haven't saved it yet, a very embarrassing celestial phenomenon will occur. You are doing secondary setup. It may be different from the previous settings, resulting in a two-part sequence stitch. The picture has changed. So after setting up, save it. In other words, before you do formal animation rendering, you should render the image first. Check out our images. Are there any problems? So before rendering the animation, be sure to check it out. We can render the image using. Let's take a look at the screen effect. As of now, there is no problem. There is a problem. I have seen it. Have you ever seen it on the tree? There will be some grass exposed. These effects, we didn't see it in the picture. But there are some here. Why does this problem occur? Right? So you see our render check. Just checked out some new problems. What about this problem? In fact, it has a prompt on it. It says that our brush system. It is necessary to enable a depth channel. Right? Depth information. So we need to open this depth channel for it. Where's this place? Let's take a look. It's in our view layer. Then let's look for it in this place. That's the depth. Just hook it up. After hooking up, let's render it again. Let's render it again. Render image. Did you find out this time? It doesn't have this problem just now. Did you see it? The rabbi at the back will not come out. Right? Okay. In that case, in our screen, without problems, we can then render the animation. Then I suggest everyone, you can find more lenses. Right? You can let it rotate. Then we go again. Press F12 on the interface to render. You can look at it from different angles. Can you find some problems? Render times are now very fast, less than a second. So let's let it turn another angle. F12, let's render again. There is no problem in the screen. Let's turn around a little bit more. Let's take a look again. Okay, then there is basically no problem. That's it. Then we can perform animation rendering. Save your file again. Then we can use the animation rendering inside this rendering, since it renders very quickly. So our animation will be rendered in a short time. Let's pay attention to the rendering animation needle, right? Each stitch is less than 1 second, right? Good. Then we let it continue to render. That's it. So what about our case? That's the end. Then I look forward to your work. Right? You can create your own animations. Submit to our comment section. When I see everyone's homework, I will give you comments and answers to questions. Doubt. Finally, thank you very much for watching our course. Friends who like it, don't forget to like and follow me. See you in the next course.